Stanley had abandoned me countless times for his childhood sweetheart when he wanted to leave me again at our engagement banquet because of a phone call from that girl. I held his hand for the first time, pleading meekly, "Can't you stay and wait until we finish the ceremony?" The venue was filled with friends and family waiting for us to take the stage. Stanley was dressed in a pristine white suit, looking handsome and upright, but there was not a hint of the sweetness of an engagement on his face. His eyebrows furrowed with worry for another woman. Stanley impatiently loosened his tie. "Wife Tina is sick. I have to go and check on her. You know her health has always been poor, always poor health. How can Tina, who is lively and eats well, be unwell every day?" This excuse was incredibly lame, but it always worked like a charm on Stanley. I stubbornly held on to Stanley, unwilling to let go. "But how can you keep someone who wants to leave? Wife, be good, Anne. Wait for me. I promise to make it up to you in the future." He decisively shook off my hand and walked away, just like every time before. He used the promise of the future to plate me, but he didn't know we don't have a future anymore. I lost my memory at the engagement banquet, chasing after the runaway groom Stanley. I was hit by a speeding car. I remember everyone except him. When I woke up, I found myself lying in the hospital. My whole body was wrapped up like a mummy. The doctor said I had multiple abrasions on my body. Fortunately, none of them were serious. My parents stood by seeing me in this state, and tears flowed down their faces. "That Stanley is really outrageous. How could he run away from the wedding like that? He has caused our Gil to suffer like this." Luckily, nothing major happened, otherwise we would never let her off the hook. I lifted my eyes and looked blankly at the hospital's white ceiling. "Stanley, who is he?" Before I could figure it out, someone else came in. The person who entered was my parents' close friends, Uncle Smith and Aunt Smith. Aunt Smith saw me and tears started to flow. "Gil, I'm sorry. It's Aunt's fault for not teaching her son properly, otherwise he wouldn't have gone so far as to run away from the wedding." Uncle Smith held my hand. "Gil, don't worry. I will go back and give Stanley a good talking to and let out your frustration." "Stanley. It's Stanley again. They all say that Stanley is the one who caused me to end up like this, but who is he exactly? Why do I have no memories at all?" Seeing me silent and expressionless, my parents became anxious again. They kept asking me if I was in pain, if I was hungry, if anything was uncomfortable. Aunt Smith and the others started cursing Stanley continuously. I looked at Aunt Smith, who was endlessly scolding, and said, "Who is this Stanley you're talking about?" My question shocked everyone in the room. My mom was so frightened that she called the doctor over again to perform a brain examination. The final result was temporary amnesia caused by brain damage sustained in the accident. Upon hearing this conclusion, I blinked my eyes. "Amnesia? But why do I remember everyone else, yet I have forgotten Stanley? I suppose it's because he isn't important." Stanley appeared on the second day of my hospitalization. He was brought over by the guilty Uncle Smith and Aunt Smith to give us some space. My parents and Aunt Smith voluntarily stepped out. He reluctantly walked in, seeing me lying in the hospital bed covered in injuries. His brows furrowed impatiently and a mocking smile appeared on his face. "Gil, what kind of trick are you playing now to deceive me into coming back? Not only did you turn yourself into this ghostly appearance, but you also pretended to have amnesia with my parents. You're really something." I lifted my head and looked at him. The person in front of me was undeniably handsome. That face could rival even a movie star, but the words coming out of this face were far from pleasant. He disdainfully said, "You're acting like a melody drama actress. No wonder Tina says you're the most scheming person behind everyone's back." I didn't believe it before, but now I see it clearly. "Do you know that Tina is also in the hospital? When she heard about your accident, she had a heart attack from worry. She's in the intensive care unit now. Her condition is much more serious than your injuries, and she needs my care more than you. It seems that this Tina holds much more importance in Stanley's heart than I do." "That works out perfectly. He's not important to me anyway, otherwise how could I have forgotten about him?" "Well then go take care of her," I suggested. It seemed like Stanley didn't hear my words clearly. "What did you say?" I said. "Since you're so concerned about her, go take care of her. My parents are here. There's no need for someone else's help. This person really, even if he wanted to take care of me, I wouldn't want it. Who would willingly let a stranger take care of them? Someone else. I've become someone else." Stanley sneered. "Gil, I've had enough of your words. It's fine to be angry, but repeating it over and over again is going too far." I didn't understand his meaning. "Someone who was insignificant in my memory. How am I suddenly someone else?" Seeing me silent, Stanley's expression softened. He sat on my bed wanting to hold my hand. The moment our skin touched, I pulled my hand away as if it was being electrocuted. His touch made me feel extremely uncomfortable. "What are you doing? Don't touch me." Stanley's face immediately turned dark and gloomy. "Gil, I've been giving you face. Now you won't even let me touch your hand. Is the next step calling off the wedding?" I looked at Stanley with confusion. "I heard them say that we never got engaged, right? Why would there be any need for a breakup?" "Then yes, according to my parents' account, Stanley left before the engagement ceremony even started, so we never actually got engaged, let alone talk about breaking up. Now I have completely forgotten about him. We are strangers once again." Stanley's face grew even more unpleasant after my remarks. He looked at me deeply as if trying to find traces of acting on my face, but I Genuinely forgot about him. I care even less about him now. What can he possibly see? I raised my head confidently, allowing Stanley to look at me however he pleased. Stanley gained nothing and admitted defeat. He sighed, saying, "Darling, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have disregarded your feelings and left in the middle of the engagement banquet. I also know that you pretended to have amnesia to make me regret and feel sad, but what can I do? Tina has no one else but me. Her health is not good, and if she falls ill, who will take care of her? Do you want me to ignore someone's life for the sake of our engagement banquet? If something really happens, if a life is involved between us, will we still be happy in the future? Besides Stanley, I don't have any other friends. Please don't blame Stanley. If you want to blame someone, blame me. I'm truly despicable. If you want to hit or scold me, go ahead, but please don't take Stanley away from me. He's the only friend I can rely on. If even he ignores me, I don't know how I'll go on living." As Tina grew up, her days in the Jones family became increasingly difficult. No wonder she clung to Stanley, the heir of the Smith family. I opened my mouth about to reassure her. Not only would I not take Stanley away from her, but I would also bless them to grow old together, united forever. But before I could speak, Stanley said with concern, "Tina, no one can take me away from you." He then looked at me warningly. "Not even Gil?" Upon hearing this, I saw Tina's expression visibly brighten in her eyes. There was a hint of triumph, provocation when she looked at me, but what was there to be triumphant about? What was there to provoke? I hardly even remembered Stanley. How he was or what he did had nothing to do with me. I met Tina's gaze directly, causing her to pause for a moment. "Since we're friends, helping each other is only natural. You can rest assured that I won't stand in the way of Stanley being with you. You're sick and need rest, so let him take care of you." As soon as I finished speaking, Tina's expression turned joyful. She looked at Stanley with delight, but Stanley didn't seem as happy as she did. He bit his lip, his face filled with frustration as he glared at me. It seemed like he was angry at my magnanimity, but isn't what he wanted for me to not care anymore? As Stanley's expression worsened, Tina said with a hint of grievance, "Gil, I knew you're still blaming me, still saying hurtful things. Please, can you forgive me?" Tina's words made Stanley suddenly realize something. He looked at me as if he had seen through me and said, "Gil, you've gone too far. No matter how jealous or resentful you are, there should be a limit. Do you not realize that Tina is currently a patient and can't handle any more stress? Please leave. Don't be in our sight." After saying that, Stanley supported Tina and walked away. As I watched their backs, I couldn't help but find it amusing. It was Stanley who didn't want me to leave just a moment ago. Now he was eager for me to go. "But Stanley, I'm not a dog that comes running at your back and call after leaving. This time I only want to never see you again." Chapter 1. Had a blast. During my days of rest at home, I had endless snacks to eat and countless variety shows and movies to watch. When I got bored, I would play some online games. Once my health improved a bit, my parents arranged for me to go abroad for further treatment. I chose an island country to experience the sunshine and beaches. Until my body was covered in a bronze tan, I still felt unsatisfied. Only then did I return home, full of lingering joy. Upon my arrival, my parents specially prepared a welcoming feast for me. Aunt Smith and Uncle Smith were also present at the banquet. They apologized to me and expressed their regrets. I understood their intentions. Over the years, our family had provided numerous projects for the Smith family. They were afraid that I would be angry with Stanley, causing a rupture in the financial ties between our families, but I am not someone who confuses personal matters with business. Moreover, I don't even remember who Stanley is anymore. How could I be angry with someone I don't even recall? I raised my glass and said to Uncle Smith, "There won't be any issues with the cooperation between our families, I assure you." Uncle Smith's face brightened. "What about Stanley? You haven't contacted him during this time. I can tell he regrets it now. Can you give him a chance?" "Regret? I didn't think so. Just a moment ago I saw Stanley and Tina's social media post making porridge for her. That sight of him washing his hands and cooking soup almost moved me." I smiled lightly and said, "Uncle Smith, as you know, I have amnesia. I've forgotten who Stanley is. You don't need to mention him to me anymore." As I finished speaking, Uncle Smith's face turned pale and defeated. "I understand, Gil. It's that boy Stanley's own misfortune. He doesn't deserve you." Chapter. After the welcoming feast, I thought I would never have any interaction with Stanley again, but that very night I received a call from Stanley. "Gil, I gave you a month of cold treatment to reflect, but how can you still behave like this? What did you mean by what you said to my parents today? You're just angry that I didn't attend your welcoming feast, right?" Tina had a stomach ache and suddenly wanted to eat the millet porridge I made for her, so I couldn't make it. Her heart condition is delicate and she needs proper care. Can't you stop being so petty? Call my parents right now and explain yourself if you're really planning to cut me off. Don't blame me for never speaking to you again. Never speaking to me again? Who cares? Well then never speak to me again. Gil, are you Done yet, I cut off Stanley's furious voice, who has the patience to listen to his nonsense. Hume's not anyone to me. He intentionally ignored me for a month, making me reflect on my own why is he so confident. Without hesitation I proceeded to block him completely. I don't want this jerk to pollute my contact list. Chapter after returning, I didn't rush to go back to work at my family's company. My parents were scared by my recent accident. They wanted me to stay at home and continue to recover for a while. Feeling bored at home, I picked up my phone and called my best friend. In no time, Lucy arrived in her flashy Lamborghini. Well, Gil, it seems like you really forgot about Stanley. If you dare to contact me, Lucy exclaimed. I was taken aback. What do you mean? Lucy laughed and said, you really forgot how? From Lucy's description, I came to know the truth. Ever since I started dating Stanley, he felt that the people in my previous circle were not ambitious enough and forbade me from hanging out with them, so I haven't been in contact with them for years. Hearing this, I was dumbfounded. Was I under some kind of spell? Before not ambitious, although Lucy and her friends are from affluent families, they are also actively involved in their own businesses, whereas the lack of ambition. Seeing my reaction, Lucy defended me, saying, it's good that you forgot. I always knew you and Stanley wouldn't last. That illegitimate daughter from the Jones family, she knows she'll never get ahead on her own, so she clings on to Stanley. Unfortunately, he falls for it and has no sense of boundaries. Since they're so inseparable, let them be together. I nodded. You're right, I have already let them be together. So have you become a Sherlock Holmes now? Tyler's teasing quickly brought me back to my teenage years. It was true that I loved reading various detective novels back then, analyzing the intricacies of the cases. I thought it was just my little hobby, but it turned out he had noticed. Unconsciously, I felt that our distance had narrowed significantly. He was no longer the distant, godlike figure, but the handsome prince sitting in the corner of the library. I actually didn't like going to the library, but Tyler's persistence kept motivating me. I thought, if someone as excellent as him was still working so hard, why shouldn't I make the most of my time and strive as well? Shared memories brought the two of us closer. I really liked you back then, so serious and diligent, Tyler said to me. I smiled. Actually, I should be saying that to him. He was the most serious and diligent person in the entire library. If it weren't for seeing him, I wouldn't have maintained my self-discipline. I thought to myself, you're so outstanding, yet you're still striving. How could I be lazy? Upon hearing my words, Tyler became ecstatic. He exclaimed, Gil, so that's how it was? Do you know, I thought the same way. I saw you going every day and I couldn't bring myself to slack off either. Who would have thought we were encouraging each other? In that moment we looked at each other and laughed. It turned out that we were both striving for each other back then. What a strange fate this is. Suddenly Tyler exclaimed. I quickly looked behind him and saw Stanley with a grim look on his face, holding an empty wine glass. He had intentionally spilled red wine on Tyler. I was furious. Stanley, what are you doing? Stanley's eyes turned red. Gil, I was wrong. Come back with me, please. I won't leave you for someone else again. I looked at Stanley coldly. You should be apologizing to Tyler, not me. How could you pour wine on someone else? Stanley clenched his teeth and refused to apologize. Tyler, do you know that Gil is my fiancé? What do you mean by getting close to him like this? Have you no shame? Tyler elegantly stood up, casually patting the wine stain on his clothes. Then he said to Stanley, Fiancé? That means we're not married. So I have the right to pursue Gil. You dare. As soon as these words came out, Stanley seemed like a lit explosive. He reached out his hand and was about to slap Tyler's face. I quickly grabbed Stanley's hand. I looked at him with disgust. Stanley, have you gone mad? Are you really insane? Let me say it one last time, I don't know you. I truly don't know you at all. I am not your fiancé and we have never been engaged. Please stop bothering me. I have absolutely no feelings for you now. You have left such a terrible impression on me, worse than a complete stranger. Upon hearing my words, Stanley seemed struck by lightning. His whole body trembled inexplicably. He stared at me in panic. It was as if he finally realized that my amnesia was real and that he was about to lose me completely. Stanley couldn't bear the blow and hastily left the scene. Tina, who had been following him all along, tried to support him, but he forcefully pushed her away. However, she wasn't saddened by it and persistently followed him as they left. Curious eyes fell upon Tyler and me. I didn't want to be treated like a monkey, so I took the initiative and said to Tyler, Do you want me to take you back to the hotel? Tyler smiled warmly and said, I would be delighted. I dropped Tyler off at the entrance of his hotel. He didn't get out of the car but looked at me seriously. Gil. What? Tyler's gaze became shy for a moment. Then he looked at me firmly and said, I mean that I want to pursue you. Gil, I like you. Coming back this time, I realized that the youthful excitement is still there. So, Gil, I hope you'll allow me to pursue you. As I looked into his eyes, I could see a reflection full of myself. It seemed like this person only had me in his eyes. Well, maybe I could give it a try. Almost involuntarily, I nodded. The eyes of this handsome man suddenly lit up like the morning stars. He leaned in and excitedly planted a gentle kiss on my cheek. At the moment our skin touched, I felt my heart skip a beat. Gil, forgive me. I'm just so happy. You have to keep your phone accessible because I'm going to pursue you from now on. Tyler is definitely a man of action. In the following days he prepared countless activities for me. Breakfast in the morning, lunch dates, goodnight moments in the evening. Every little romantic gesture between a couple played out between us. And these were experiences that I had never had in my previous life. I realized for the first time that being favored by someone, being loved so wholeheartedly, was truly wonderful. Falling in love with Tyler wasn't difficult. Someone like him was meant to be loved by others. And as the lucky one whom he had fallen in love with, I couldn't escape his web of affection. Soon enough I brought him home. My parents adored Tyler the moment they saw him. Smiles stretched across their faces throughout the meal. Tyler, this beef is delicious, try it. And these prawns are great too, have some more. And this red wine is from your uncle's collection, give it a taste. Tyler was being fed all sorts of food but his smile never wavered. After finishing the meal I took Tyler for a walk outside the villa. Holding Tyler's hand I asked, were you scared by my parents' enthusiasm earlier? Tyler shook his head. Not at all. I loved it. Gil, that's probably what home feels like. I think your parents and mine will get along well. They're both such warm-hearted people. I see. Perhaps it's time to arrange a meeting between our parents. As soon as I voiced my thoughts, Tyler seemed a bit at a loss. I loved his flustered state so much that I couldn't help but give him a kiss. The atmosphere was so beautiful and intoxicating. But there are always people who love to cause trouble. Gil. Tyler. A voice of shock came from the opposite side. Are you two really together? Tyler, you have no shame. I turned my head and met Stanley's resentful gaze. I furrowed my brows. What are you shouting about? Who are you and how dare you come here and insult my boyfriend? Stanley stumbled for a moment then burst out, I'm your fiancé. I'm Stanley. How can you really forget about me? How can you allow just any man to come between us? I scoffed. And who says I can't forget about you? Stanley, I warn you, don't come and disturb my life anymore. And furthermore, Tyler is not just any man. He is my beloved. I tightly held Tyler's hand as if I were holding the whole world. Stanley suddenly burst into laughter. He stared intently at the hand that Tyler and I were holding. Good. Very good. Gil, you certainly are something. Well, I hope you never remember me and never have any regrets. I smiled calmly. Of course I won't have any regrets. Tyler and I are getting engaged next month. If you don't mind, you're welcome to attend. Stanley's lips turned pale in an instant and he spoke with determination. Then congratulations in advance to both of you. But I may not have the time to attend because I'm also getting engaged, to Tina. Oh well, congratulations to you too. Stanley seemed stung by my congratulations, stumbled for a moment and then turned and walked away.